And welcome to Visceral Reactions, your regular stop for irregular amounts of horror. And you know what we say here, the more of the horror, the more you should just say no to vacationing in a cabin in the woods.
The more copious amounts of blood will just start pouring from the pipes.
Everywhere. I'm Matthew Germanis.
I'm Quinton Williams.
Now, what with all the talk about the bomb and Ronald Reagan, it can be easy to forget the lighter side of fear. That the sense of being terrified is a rush, not all that different from the ache of rib cages after you've laughed way too much. Humor and horror work on similar levels, and both have the potential to evoke strong psychological and physiological reactions. Charles Barton's Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein and Sam Raimi's Evil Dead 2 both employ humor to break the tension of genuine fear and suspense without even being aware of it. The laughs cause us to lower our guard, thus making the viewer more susceptible to the tension and fear that will surely build. The laughter is a reminder that something relatable, something human, remains in a state of danger on screen, and that it could just as easily be you fighting for your life against the dead and undead. So, today's episode is looking at how funny scary things can be.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. Also, given that it's, hey, season finale. Welcome.
Season finale.
We did it. We made it through. No one died. No one got possessed. No one got chopped up.
Not yet.
It was, a pretty good run.
Maybe disappointing if you look at it from the number of possessions.
Yep.
But we'll hold out for next season.
Yeah. But what's interesting ending the season off with this episode is for both films, there's not really anything culturally that ties the films. It's like their own separate entities.
Yeah.
There's no like satire, propaganda, like message. It's just these films being a heck of a lot of fun.
Or at least one of them. It's kind of the only episode where I think it's kind of just fun to look at both of these on their own. Like no cultural context.
Not any I could find. They're like so tight.
Yeah.
In being in their own little worlds that you can't really poke a hole in them and be like, oh, that's because of what happened during this time or because of this. They're just their own little bubbles.
Yeah. If there's anything that you can possibly do, it's looking at the business side of Hollywood. And looking at how both of these as entries in a franchise operate by using existing property and really cashing in on it or trying to cash in on it.
Yeah.
With Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, which is definitely one of the funniest movies ever made.
Yes, I stand by that. Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein is not only one of my favorite films of all time, I think it is one of the, if not the funniest film ever made. And that's saying a lot. But this one, it just... Yeah. I watched this film so many times. It's been a while, but even like going back and remembering the jokes, they still got a hearty, loud laugh out of me, especially from Wilbur Costello.
Yeah.
He gets all the best jokes.
He does. I think probably my favorite joke is when he's being questioned about how much he's working. And he says, I can't do that. I'm a union man. I work 16 hours a day.
Mr. McDougal?
Yeah.
A union man only works 8 hours a week.
Yeah. And he's like, well, I belong to two unions.
I belong to two unions.
Like, that's just good. Like, that's just a really good line. It's comedic gold.
Yeah, because you're having a film that, as slapsticky as it is, which it is, and it's great, the humor comes from the jokes that are written, and the jokes are just so tight and so that witty 1940s jokes.
What works, like to have a movie where you combine one of the biggest comedic duos in Hollywood history up to that point.
Who's the two guys before?
Laurel and Hardy?
Yes, Laurel and Hardy. There we go.
Yeah. So, as far as like comedic duos, you've got Laurel and Hardy. And then as far as just like comedic, groups, those two, and then the Marx Brothers, the Three Stooges.
You would end up getting Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin in the 50s.
They're in a long tradition, and they end up being involved in something that had never really been done before, and that's kind of like this very early version of an extended universe.
Yes, let's explain that for people who don't know.
So prior to Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, so that was done in 1948.
Mm-hmm.
The 4 characters, 3 that you see, 1 that you don't at the very end.
Voiced by Vincent Price.
Yeah. These are characters that by this point are almost 20 years old.
Yes. I looked it up. Surprisingly, the Wolfman's younger.
Yeah, 1941.
Yeah, 1941.
Yeah. So 1931, you have both Dracula
and Frankenstein coming out the same year. That must have been crazy for people.
Yeah. In that span, you have the main actors involved.
Yep, Bela Lugosi, Lon Chaney Jr., not Boris Karloff.
Yeah, Glenn Strange.
Glenn Strange. He does a pretty damn good job as Frankenstein.
He does. This would be Glenn Strange's 3rd appearance.
Yeah.
As Frankenstein. Let's see.
What else was he in?
He also did. Let's see. I have it written down because there's so much to keep track of.
Yes, there's a lot of. This is like the first cinematic universe, as we talked about, because after doing Frankenstein and Dracula having a few sequels, Frankenstein having a few more, some better than others, but then they started doing these
a lot of crossovers.
House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula, Dracula meets the Wolfman, and you have these characters, Frankenstein, Dracula, and the Wolfman, sometimes even like a hunchback or a mad scientist, all in these like this crossover event films, and they are the same characters, maybe not played by the same actors, because I think in Wolfman meets Frankenstein, it's Bela Lugosi playing Frankenstein, and I think in one of them, no, that was in Son of Dracula, where Lon Chaney Jr. plays Dracula, but regardless, you have these same characters, mainly for like Lawrence Talbot as the Wolfman, which was always my favorite.
Yeah.
I always loved, he seemed more sympathetic and the most like a victim than any of the others. But you have these like multiple films, and you have like this awesome thing like prior to Alien versus Predator and all those, and very much the MCU, where they're all together, and it's just always a ton of fun. And
it is.
This film's no different.
Whereas with all of the monsters, these characters have appeared in numerous films. It's also the beginning of the Abbott and Costello meet the monster.
They would end up doing Abbott and Costello meet the Mummy, Abbott and Costello meet, I think, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, a few other ones.
Yeah, so they do 4 more.
Oh, okay.
So they meet the killer, Boris Karloff.
Oh, cool.
Right, the year after this. And then they meet the Invisible Man.
Oh, yep.
And then Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And then the Mummy is the last one. And like after that, they don't do any more. Because by the mid-50s, the box office results were not too great.
Yeah, and like by the mid-50s, the Universal monster craze had kind of come and gone. Really, the last one was Creature of the Black Lagoon.
Yeah, and that was kind of like a last, and then it's all about the new wave of
horror.
Sci-fi horror.
Yeah.
Where things like the Blob that we've talked about, things involving more aliens, monsters created by toxic, nuclear material, like all that kind of stuff. Like this is definitely like an all-star movie.
Oh yeah,
in terms of
they got everyone.
In terms of the monsters, prior to this, Glenn Strange played the creature in House of Frankenstein and House of Dracula.
Oh, okay. Then it was only in Wolfman meets Frankenstein where it was Bela Lugosi. Okay.
Lon Chaney Jr. plays the Wolfman in The Wolfman. Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula, and then, of course, Abbott and Costello.
We should point out that Lon Chaney Jr.
is the only one.
Yep, who has done all 4 of the major ones. He's been Dracula, he's been Frankenstein, he's been Wolfman, obviously, and he's been the Mummy.
Yeah. So with the creature, he plays him in The Ghost of Frankenstein.
Oh, yeah, that was right after The Son of Frankenstein, which The Son of Frankenstein is really good. Ghost of Frankenstein's kind of weird.
Yeah.
I think the end of the film is Igor, played by Bela Lugosi, swaps his brain, and then he becomes Frankenstein's monster. It's kind of weird.
And then the year after that, he plays Dracula in Son of Dracula.
Yep.
And then he played the Mummy 3 times in The Mummy's Tomb, The Mummy's Ghost, and The Mummy's Curse.
Those are all sequels to, of course, the famous Boris Karloff,
Yeah.
The Mummy, which is two completely different characters. One's
Yeah.
sophisticated and suave, and the other's just
Yeah,
killing bros left and right.
exactly. I think the most interesting of all of the credits
Mm-hmm.
is the fact that Bela Lugosi, prior to Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, only played Dracula once.
Yeah, that's the craziest thing. You would think,
That just goes to show how much the character is synonymous with him.
mm-hmm.
That even with all of these, like we're talking like dozens of monster movies.
And like a lot more Dracula films.
Yeah.
There was Dracula's Daughters, I think.
Yeah.
And Son of Dracula. I don't think Bela Lugosi was involved in any of them. I think
Literally the only one.
that's crazy.
So like he goes 17 years. Like that's how much he wanted to get away from that character to avoid being typecast.
But he also loved the character. He was
He-
buried in his
yeah.
Dracula costume.
Like he had the respect for the character. Like this is something I think that goes to show what was important for some of these actors who were only connected, and who are still connected in cultural memory
Yep.
with these creations.
Mm-hmm.
That Bela Lugosi only signed on to do Abbott and Costello. One, probably because he very likely needed the money.
Yeah.
But two, he felt that the script did not take away any dignity from Dracula.
Yeah, and I think he quoted saying like he had a wonderful time.
Yeah.
Wear the costume, scare the boys, get the paycheck. That was
Exactly.
it. And I remember Glenn Strain saying this was like the best. He had the best time
Yeah.
working on it.
Lon Chaney Jr.
Lon Chaney Jr. did not like the script.
He did not like the mix of humor.
Yeah, he said the script wasn't very good.
He said it literally made a joke of these characters, and it's possible that as one of the more sympathetic.
Yeah, and you have to remember, like Lon Chaney Jr., like he probably had to work the most because
Yeah.
when you see him transforming into the Wolfman, it's like a slow dissolve of the effects, like meaning he had to sit there or lay there for hours and have them meticulously put it on and then boom, ready to go for like a few minutes and then have to take it off.
Yeah.
He probably with all the work he had to do, then of course he would want it to be a very tight and good script for him because like I said, the Wolfman to me has always been the more interesting character.
Mm-hmm.
Dracula, like going back and if you rewatch it, out of the three main ones, the 1931 Dracula, it's okay. It's not really the best one. It's still pretty good. Frankenstein, I feel like has always been the best, including its sequels. But I always enjoyed the Wolfman. You get to see, like, in Lon Chaney Jr.'s face, just the pain and anguish he has to go through living this terrible curse and having to also, in a way, live up to his father, Lon Chaney, who was known as the man of 1,000 faces.
Yeah.
He did his own makeup, and he was very big in the silent era. But yeah, Lon Chaney Jr. Did not like particularly the script. He's not the only one. There are two people in particular who not only did not like the script, but also were apparently not very, were not the best on set. And it's not the monsters, it's quote, the real monsters of the whole production.
Which unfortunately are Abbott and Costello.
Yeah, I joke, but
Yeah, apparently Charles Barton, the film's director, did not really care for working with them.
Yeah, they would. I don't know if
They were they would be late.
Yep,
They wouldn't show up
They
at
would
all.
sit around, play cards.
Yeah, like they didn't take it seriously, and it doesn't look good when the people whose names are in the title are not taking the movie seriously.
And you wouldn't tell from the film because, like, especially with Costello, like they're bringing their A game. Mainly, I never like. Of course, Abbott's always the straight man, so he doesn't have much to do. He's just kind of being all stern. But like Costello, he brings it.
There's a moment when Dracula is chasing him towards the end, where he pulls the curtain, like the cloth from under,
and the stuff on the table,
and it stays. And he looks at the camera, and he's
it's like,
he's in shock. Yeah, he's like, look at that, like, and then he runs away. Yeah, like I love that. But yeah, no, it's one of those moments where it's like mommy and daddy are fighting and they're about to get a divorce, but like the children are like, we have no idea. And like you're just watching it and you're like, oh, everything looks great, right? And then you find out, no, actually they're extremely miserable. And it seems like something common amongst these comedy groups where like there's a lot more discord underneath.
They're like full of hot air.
Yeah. You know, like they did like 36 movies together.
They did a lot of films. They were on radio. They had a TV show. I used to watch it on Netflix. I loved it so much because there were moments when they would break in corpse, and it was always funny to see like them actually genuinely laughing. That's always great. But yeah, I guess I don't know if it's just they felt like they were too good for it because this is their whole shtick, their comedy. So I don't know.
Or maybe they were tired of it. Maybe it was like, it's not fun anymore. I don't know. But thankfully, they were able to put on a good face and make this because it really, I think the reason that it works so well is that you have humor being inserted into what would otherwise just be another Universal monster movie. Like they're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. Like they're not trying to adapt this like weird new hybrid genre.
No.
The set design is the same as would be in any other monster
big
movie.
Laboratory, big castle.
The lighting is very similar. Like it looks like the typical 1940s Universal movie. And the makeup isn't different. Like the monsters don't look...
Frankenstein looks like Frankenstein. Yep. Wolfman look like Wolfman.
Yeah. Like you get the same dissolve during transformation. Yep. Lugosi's Dracula costume is the same. Like there's nothing visually to tell you that this is different.
You just got two goobers in the background.
Yeah, exactly. And like that makes the film work on a level where you can put yourself in this scenario.
Yeah.
Where you can... like, what would happen if you were in Dracula's castle? Like, what would happen if you're reading about the legend of Dracula next to a coffin and you keep seeing it move?
Oh, chick. Chick.
like candles don't move,
That's just the wind when he's toiling.
And like the whole like revolving.
Oh, it's great.
I always love that.
And Dracula has his back like that.
When
mysteriously the coffin in between them.
Yeah,
like wow, they were quick.
Like Frankenstein. The creature's never boogied harder than he has in that scene.
He eats the doctor.
Yeah,
out of the window.
Oh my god. So like apparently I was reading that in that moment when Glenn Strange is throwing Lenore Aubert, who plays the doctor, Sandra Mornay, who tricks Costello into giving up his brain.
Sandra Jr.
Giving up his brain to be put into...
Junior.
Yeah. Because Dracula feels that would be the idea.
Yeah, because Frankenstein's weakening or he's dying. Or the plot's very thin. Going back to it, watching it, it's been a few years, but the plot's a lot more thinner than traditional Universal monster movies. Mainly because you're there from really Abbott and Costello.
Exactly.
And to see monsters do the ooga booga.
Yeah.
And it's just a lot of fun. But yeah, so apparently she got hurt.
And Glenn Strange got hurt. He broke his ankle because he tried to, he throws her through the window.
Yeah.
But she came back. Like the rigging system did not work the best. And so she ends up coming back towards him, and I guess because of the boots that he's wearing as the creature, he broke his ankle. And so when that moment is filmed, what we see on screen is not Glenn Strange, but Lon Chaney. Because by this point, he had played the creature already.
Mm-hmm. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah. The Wolfman's not in that scene.
No, Wolfman's fighting, going toe-to-toe with Dracula.
Yeah. I don't know if he volunteered or if Charles Barton asked him to do it, but it was obviously the logical choice.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's Lon Chaney doing it. Speaking of that, the fight with Dracula. When Dracula transforms, the animation,
it's hand-drawn,
is so cool.
Yeah. And it's a rubber bat, but pretty convincing. Not 100% convincing, but it flaps like how a bat would, just kind of slow. It's like
and then he just, I guess it's because I just rewatched Little Nicky last night. But when he turns into the bat, my immediate thought is, oh, be careful because Ozzy's
gonna
around.
bite your head off.
And he's going to, yeah. You know, Ozzy Osbourne. You know, like he's going to pop up. But no, unfortunately, it's just the Wolfman. And then both of them just...
Dracula trying to like eat out of there, turns to the bat, just Wolfman grabs his bat and the dustling, and he fall out the window and like, fall into the water.
Yeah,
I think that's the last time, like, we ever see him, like ever, like the final appearances of.
It's like a very kind of heroic death for Wolfman that he goes out, you know. But I don't know if that would kill Dracula based on everything we've discussed about vampires. I don't know if that would do it.
I don't know if it would like kill any of them. Like they always call. I mean, Frankenstein survived a burning windmill. So
yeah, the wonderful thing about movie monsters is that if you don't show them actually dying, like head decapitated, silver bullet, stake through the heart.
It's always like some bullshit reason they're back. Yeah, and it's flimsy, but you're like, I don't care more.
Yeah.
We get more.
I mean, even if you do see Michael Myers burning in a basement of fire, it's like, well, the next one's just going to start and he's going to somehow, like, he's going to get out. The fire department's going to let him out. And they're going to get wrecked.
Very in vain of the old film serials where it's like, what's going to happen next time?
Yeah.
And even like in the old comics, in the early Batman comics, Joker would like fall off a cliff or something. He's like, well, that's the last of Joker. And then I'm back.
and like, you just have to deal with it.
Yeah, it's like, it's more Joker.
Yeah.
More Wolfman, more all of it. Great. Yeah. Who's complaining?
Apparently Abbott and Costello.
I think Abbott it was Costello who said that my 6-year-old daughter could write better than this.
That's how you know it's bad.
Yeah.
Or like that's how you know it's bad that like someone is just not happy.
Mm-hmm.
It's a shame because this made so much money.
Of course, it's like
it's a dream.
What do people like? They like the monsters. They like Abbott and Costello. Boom.
Yeah.
You can't not make money.
This made more money than any of them since like Frankenstein.
Right.
That's a big deal. I guess I'm just amazed that there was so much tension, and yet everyone managed to not kill each other.
Yeah.
And instead, they made a really just like an hilarious movie.
Oh,
I mean, when I think about Abbott and Costello, I think of this movie.
It's that and Who's on First.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. But as far as like, as a kid...
I love this. As a kid,
like anything that had the Universal monsters in it, like
I'm sold.
That was cool.
Yeah.
And so the idea of putting them in a funny movie,
what?
You know, it's like any kid who loves, I'll just speak for myself. Like as a kid, you know, growing up and loving Star Wars.
Yep.
It's like, wait, Spaceballs exists? Absolutely.
It's like Star Wars, but funny.
Funny, exactly. Yeah. It's like, you just show me something that's like kind of close to it.
Yeah.
And like, that's it. I'm good. I appreciate that this exists because it works in the way that I think any horror comedy works. And it's that it's constantly relieving, like it's creating tension and then it's relieving tension, creating it and then breaking it, creating and then breaking it. And I think by having this movie not look goofy, and not look any different from any of the movies that Lon Chaney and Bela Lugosi and Glenn Strange are doing prior to this, that if you're literally just taking Abbott and Costello and you're putting them in the movie, then you are doing what the movies are trying to do by taking the viewer and just saying like, what if you were in here? What if you were in Dracula's castle? You know, how would you react if all of a sudden a hand came out of a coffin? There's something universal about that. Like the moments when Costello is like, he was trying to whistle and he's like, and he can't, you know, and then he's like playing charades really with Abbott. Yeah. And he's like, no.
All I did was this.
Yeah. You know, like, Oh man, when he tries to trick the creature into thinking that he's Dracula, and he's like, "Yeah, but he thinks I'm Dracula."
I think of Dracula, and he goes, "Oh,"
and then they run away.
Or that the bit where like they're barricading the door, and he's like, "He can't get in. He can't get in." Frankenstein just opens it because it was going the wrong way. And they're like, "Oh,
oh man!" But like, there's like genuine terror when the creature also breaks through the door.
Yeah.
That they just locked. Like they shove him in after they trick him, and they, and it's the classic like hand through the door.
Yeah.
And
I love that. The hand goes through the door and just Costello's just frozen like
yeah. And it's like there's something very realistic about that.
Yeah.
And I think even for a movie as silly as this can be, like there are also these very genuine moments of what are we feeling?
Yeah.
Like what is our emotional response to what's on screen? And I think that's one of the most interesting things to ask about any comedy or any horror film. But when you have both operating in the same one, it gives you a chance to really say, like, okay, what is this doing? Like, how is it doing it? How many funny lines do we get until there's something scary?
Like,
and
how do you
versa.
balance it?
Yeah.
And how do you get a moment that's equally funny and terrifying?
Yeah.
Because that's like difficult to one after another. You can balance out pretty easily if you're like careful, but at the same time, you need like.
Well, it's like when the revolving secret doorway is happening. Costello's on that platform on the stairs. And there are only two directions to go. And on one stairway is Dracula, and on the other is the creature.
and they're
like he's stuck,
lumbering closer and closer, and they almost get him.
They do, and then he's like, "Open Siegfried, open sesame,"
Check.
Yeah, and he's trying to get the door open, and it's like the moments whenever like Indiana Jones is in any temple trap thing, and like the matter of time is reduced to seconds in which he will either be trapped, crushed, or make it alive. And it's like that, but with Costello and these two monsters, and like he's trying to like open up the door, and it's not, and then it finally does, and so you're. So like it's funny to look at his reaction because he's scared, bloodless, and they keep getting closer.
Yeah, it's you laugh because like Abbott Costello doing and then but it's tense because like they're gonna get him.
Yeah, and then like what are they gonna do when they get him? What happens if they get him? Like is Dracula gonna bite him? Is like the creature gonna like rip him apart? Like what's gonna happen? And like because you don't know that, and because we don't know what they would do if they like really got them, like not trying to just turn them into something. Towards the very end, after the operation doesn't happen, Costello is in a moment. He's in this scenario where like one after the other, he is alone in a room with one of the monsters. Literally, Dracula and the creature are pushing him back and forth on a gurney. And then Lon Chaney turns into the Wolfman. Yeah. And he's just like looking at this change because like Talbot is going to save him. And then, and this is just brilliant. Like Costello looks at his hands and he sees them.
The fur.
Yeah. And then you look up and he's transformed and it's like, holy shit. And of course what makes it all terrifying is that he's strapped to this table.
Yeah.
He can't do anything. Like if you were in a room alone within 5 minutes of each other with Dracula, the creature, and the Wolfman, like you would have just died from fright.
No matter being the audience how it looks, because it looks silly because it's a comedy movie, and like,
but
if you were like you yourself were strapped in a room and you saw a vampire, a werewolf, and a creature made out of body parts, just like about to pounce on you, you'd be like,
exactly. Like your brain would not be able to comprehend what's happening, and you'd be scared stiff.
You'd be frozen.
Yeah.
You're like, what could you?
What are you gonna do? Like, and especially if you're you're strapped to an operating table.
Game over.
Yeah,
Nothing.
that's it. Like
what could
like
you do?
Nothing. You can't do anything. And so it's like that. I'm sure like a lot of the audience members are not maybe thinking through it that intensely when they're seeing this in theaters,
right?
But they're feeling it. Like, and that's the thing that's so wonderful is that when it comes to what's funny and what's scary, you can experience both so intensely without really understanding why.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it's not possible to describe, like, why is something funny? Why does this joke work? Why does this one bend? Why does the other break?
Yeah.
Like,
I always think about that because there's this, like, I'm always a big fan. I love dry humor. Dry humor is my favorite. That dry, like, English, British humor. And, like, sometimes it just, like, something just tickles my brain. I just bark out laughing.
Yeah.
And I can't explain to you at that very moment why I laugh. You can just say, I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
And that's really all.
You've had a reaction, and I think when the humor, or I should say when the fear, when the terror is more subtle, the humor makes up for it by being even more overt.
Yeah.
So we get, we get the slow creeping fear of the Wolfman's transformation, of Dracula putting the cloak in front of his face, of the creature's movement. You pair that with the slapstick and the very quick humor of Abbott and Costello, and it works.
Yeah.
And I think the inversion of that is what's happening in Evil Dead 2.
Yes. So, right off the bat, this is your first time seeing Evil Dead 2.
This is my first time seeing any Evil Dead movie.
Because did you watch both?
I watched
both too because it's been a while and I love them so much. Just right off the bat, because I know your version for 80s movies.
Yeah.
What did you think of them?
Less because they're 80s movies and more just because I don't think I care too much for Sam Raimi.
Really? Ooh, that's controversial.
I guess I like Darkman as a kid.
Yeah.
And
Darkman's still great.
Obviously.
It's cheesy, but that's what you get for Sam Raimi. You get like good quality cheese. Good Gouda.
I think really the Spider-Man trilogy, and not even the Spider-Man trilogy, the first two Spider-Man movies are where his like, I don't want to say his competency, but his skill shows through. Like, as far as like what is he capable of? Spider-Man 2 for me is like, that's like the benchmark. And I'm hoping that with the new Doctor Strange, I really hope that is kind of like a combination of what I think I can see of what people were seeing with the first two Evil Deads, and also what he did with Spider-Man.
Yeah, because like, just a brief, not to diverge too much, but like the operation scene with them trying to take off Doc Ock's arms, and the madness that ensues, that's Evil Dead. Yeah, that like this. The cuts and the camera movements and everything, like,
that makes sense.
That's Sam Raimi.
Yeah. And I think what I don't know, not bothers me, but I think when it comes to the two Evil Deads, I think all of the gore, like it was over. Okay, this is all right. Because I haven't gotten to talk to anybody about this.
Right.
So this is all like kind of like still processing. Both of the movies are much too overstimulating. There's too much going on at any given moment, whether it's all of the gore, or there's a lot of screaming. And I get it for what happens in both of these movies, but like, I feel like every time I was looking at Bruce Campbell, he was yelling, like he was screaming, and I get it,
right?
But it's just like when there's too much repetition of that, it kind of like it takes me out of it, because then I get annoyed and like the sound ends up like hurting me. Yeah,
there are a few moments where like the screaming gets like a lot when all the Deadites are like in the first one.
Yeah.
They're all just screaming up a storm. I forget which ones.
Yeah, the one that they trap in the floor.
It's not Lindsay. It's I don't remember her name. I had it in my head, and she says, "Rah."
Yeah, and it's a lot.
Yeah, it can be a lot, and I agree with you with that.
You know, I guess I didn't really understand. Like, it took a while for me to understand what was even really happening. Like, in terms of who these people were, like with the first one especially. Like, I know we're talking about the second one.
Yeah, I think you can't really talk about the second one without talking about the first one.
And
so let's just...
What's weird...
Yeah.
And I think the reason why we can't not talk about the first one is because the second one, the first 20 minutes is a remake.
Yeah, okay. So we'll get let's start chronologically.
You should go through, because you know this, you enjoy it.
Yes.
This is...
So you didn't like them?
No.
You did not?
No, I didn't.
Are there bits that you did like?
No.
You didn't like... You didn't like Bruce Campbell?
I did not.
Oh, no.
I didn't. I know.
People are going to get you for that.
Yeah, probably. I guess, he's like a goofy Patrick Warburton. and I can see the appeal. I don't understand where the cult following comes from.
Oh, maybe that's mainly from how he acts in Army of Darkness, which we'll end up getting to at some point.
Okay.
But that aside, so...
Yeah, go for it.
The first Evil Dead, you have an interesting... I don't even know how to describe it, happenstance with this film, because in, reality, this film shouldn't have been as successful as it was.
Yeah.
Because what you have is, really, you just have, a bunch of school-aged friends who have grown up and hey, we want to make a movie. You got Sam Raimi, Bruce Campbell, and who's the third one? It was
Scott Spiegel.
It may be Scott Spiegel or the other guy. I can't remember his name. I think his last name's Traber or something.
Is it Robert?
Yeah, maybe. It's one of those two that are hey, we used to make 8mm films together as kids growing up and in high school and stuff, and let's make a movie, not out of any necessity but pure love and passion of movies.
Mm-hmm. So
they make the little almost like a demo reel, called Within the Woods, and it had, of course, Bruce Campbell in it and a few others. They managed to scrounge up $1,000 to make it. They made it, I think, I don't know if it got picked up by someone, but showed marginal success when people saw it. And all right, we have to go ahead. I say go ahead. They didn't really get it from a studio. Let's do this for real. So what these 3-4 guys managed to do is scrounge whatever money they can from family, from friends, from a lawyer, from a guy they knew who his roommate was a lawyer. They managed to gather up $300,000. They got film equipment. They got a crew. They got people to do special effects and stuff. And they went out in a cabin in Tennessee and they did show some other exterior shots somewhere else. And they made this movie. And you can see that it's a bit rough around the edges.
Yeah.
Because most of these people... besides Within the Woods and another film, which is really Sam Raimi's first film, I forget what it's called. It has, of course, Bruce Campbell in it that he made before. This is really
Crime Wave?
No, that comes after. And
Okay.
We'll have to talk about that. Something Maniac, I think? I don't remember. But this is really the big deal for all of them. It was really Sam Raimi's big break. It was, of course, Bruce Campbell's big break. And everyone involved, and even Joe Cohen was a part of it.
That was I remember probably a decade or so ago when I watched Blood Simple for the first time, the Coen brothers' first movie, and I remember seeing Sam Raimi's name in the credits, and I was like, oh, that's really weird. I didn't know that they were connected. And then eventually learning that they were all friends.
Yeah.
But I did not know, and I'm glad that I watched the credits for Evil Dead to the very end, and then I saw assistant film editor Joel Cohen.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, look at that.
They were just all like friends.
Yeah. And I was curious then when watching Evil Dead 2 if I would see like the Coens appear in any way. They didn't, unless I missed them.
Not unless they were fake shimps.
Yeah.
As Sam Raimi likes to call them.
I'm gonna need you to explain that.
Yeah.
Of the like how that's used in this.
Yeah. So getting back to it, they make this film, and like from the film itself, you can see something very much its own thing. Maybe not 100% original, but unique and stylistic. Because even like early on, you can see that unique Sam Raimi side with like the entity in the woods with the movement and all that.
Yeah, that was interesting.
And some of like the interesting edits he does,
Yeah.
and like that really, I think, beautiful shot of the camera spinning around from the perspective of the basement, and it gets all the people's faces one after another. So you have this really unique style from a filmmaker who never really went to film school. He just did it on his own. He had this vision, and he came out with this almost like defining genre, because as far as I know, there was never this type of cabin in the woods film. There was never what I can consider really the architect of what survival horror video games would become. This one person just trying to survive the night. That's what you get with probably the most unlikely male protagonist in a horror film, which is Ashley Williams, because he's really like this kind of almost whimpering, like cowardice type character, and he has to really just man up and try to survive. And what you end up is you're getting this film that, of course, you don't particularly like, but I very much like, and I know a lot of other people's like. Yes, it's crude, and the special effects are kind of crude and a bit like, not top notch, but it has a charm to it, I feel.
Yeah, that the low budget anything, whether it's the special effects or the any of the animation, like none of that, like that didn't bother me at all. Like I figured that it wasn't made with too much money. Like just knowing how early it was made in Sam Raimi's career, like I figured like, oh, this was probably like made with pennies. And that was fine. I guess it was more of just like how everything was executed.
Would you have enjoyed it if there was less screaming?
That would have helped a lot. It's really, it's like if someone doesn't turn their car alarm off for a while.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh God, how long is this gonna,
So you have all that, and they make the film. There was, of course, it was almost like guerrilla filmmaking. There was a lot of issues with production and stuff. And that's where the fake shimps come in. I don't remember exactly. The term was coined by Sam Raimi. He originated it. And it harkens back to when Three Stooges, there was, Curly, and there was originally Shemp.
mm-hmm.
And he was on there, and he got replaced by Larry, and then Shemp came back. So these are, the fake Shemps are, what they are is other people pretending to be, they're like the body doubles of the other actors who either didn't want to come back or couldn't come back. I think it was mainly they couldn't come back.
Mm-hmm.
So that they use that. They put them in enough prosthetics, you can't tell. So that's where the term, and it either could be like a face or a hand or a body, anything.
Okay.
So they're essentially the body doubles. And there's like quite a few. There's like 10, 15. One of them being Ted Raimi's brother, who would be very synonymous with the Evil Dead franchise. And so you have this film that I think they knew a guy who could get it into a movie theater, or they bribed a guy to get into a movie theater, because like they were just going off the cuff for this.
Yeah,
they didn't have an experience, so they got this film released to a movie theater, and people seem to like it. But there's an important person that really changed the whole thing for them, who loved it, who was like, "Hey, everyone, see this film," and it was Stephen King.
Mm.
Stephen King saw it. He's like, this is great. This is awesome. People, you need to see this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they got in touch with New Line Cinema to distribute it. And the rest is history. And it's, it may not be Halloween levels of indie film success, but it was marginally successful. It launched a ton of careers. We wouldn't have the Coen brothers probably without this film. Maybe that's a stretch. It's a building block to what the Coen brothers would become and what, hell, Sam Raimi would have such a good career. And Bruce Campbell is known as, the king of B movies.
Mm-hmm.
He's done a lot of like really successful B movies, and he's in this limelight. Maybe he wouldn't be like the leading man, even though he had all the characteristics of a leading man.
Yeah.
And you'll see that when we get to Army of Darkness. He has the suaveness to it. And then after that, you were talking about Crime Wave.
Mm-hmm.
That was, I don't remember if Sam Raimi directed it. He may have directed it.
I think so.
But it was written by the Coen brothers.
Yeah.
And it did terrible.
Yeah.
It was not good. Bruce Campbell, of course, in it, and a few others. And so that came out in 1984, I think.
I think so. Yeah, because 1985 is when Blood Simple comes out.
Yeah. I have to
So it was either the same year or the year before.
quickly need to look something up because it's going to be important talking about the film. So Evil Dead, Crime Wave does not do well. And they're like, all right, we need something to really boost our careers. Boop, boop, boop. We need something. So they start working on making Evil Dead 2. Stephen King somehow got in contact with them to get funding for this, and they went to Della De Laurentiis, famous Italian horror film, who helped really finance the film, and they got that, and they got a bunch of other people. So they started like, who was it that was written? It was Sam Raimi and Scott Spiegel, who made it, of course, and they were all like 2 or 3 of them were like living in this house with the Coen brothers. And here it is. They were in this house with Frances McDormand, Kathy Bates, and Holly Hunter, with the Coen brothers and Spiegel and Raimi. They're always living in this house, and they just start writing, and they wanted it to be set in the medieval times, and that didn't end up working. And so they got like the funding. They got $3.5 million, which is a lot more. It's almost 100 times more than what they had, 100 times more than
for the first Evil
Dead. For the budget you have. And then they have, they start, going ahead with this film. And yes, you were talking about the first 10 minutes, 20 minutes being a remake. And I think it was because they had lost they didn't have the rights to the first one or something.
Oh,
I don't know.
Okay.
That's what Bruce Campbell said. I don't know if that was because it was at that point. I don't know if it was completely owned by New Line Cinema or something, or De Laurentiis had it, but
I kind of assumed that it was because of how low budget the first one was.
It may have been
that not that many people saw it.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was like a way of catching people up.
Yeah, maybe.
Like that made sense, but like
I counted it. It's only 7 minutes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's 7 minutes where it catches up to the I call it the main Deadite baddie, first person camera.
Yeah.
Lunging after Ash. Mm-hmm. Where how the ending of the first one is. And really, if you just cut that like 7 minutes out and tape it on to this one, you have like a really compelling like 2.5 hour movie. So it's a hour and a half, hour 25 minutes. 7 minutes, I don't mind them taking that to have this little backstory, and 7 minutes like rebuild up. That's fine by me, because in my mind, like if you just cut it out, the same movie.
Yeah,
it's the same night, and it essentially is. And what you have now is a much cleaner and more competent Evil Dead film than you have with that one. Which that one, the first one, you have to deal with, him surviving the night and all this gore and stuff. This one is more like that's all said and done with. Now it's just watching this one man slowly descend into madness. It's more of a psychological horror. That's where the humor of the film comes in, because this film is funny.
I did notice that it was trying to be like it was going for a lot more humor than the first one
Yeah,
was.
it's a lot more slapstick and like almost absurdist type humor.
Yeah.
I think it works because you have Bruce Campbell, who's more in his A game. He's had more experience in acting. I feel like he does a lot better with the role of Ash than the first one. So you have Bruce Campbell's he's a very physical actor. This is like really shows his like acting chops as a physical comedy actor more than the main antagonist, because you having these these really kind of goofy facial expressions as he's slowly going mad, and you have really some of the best parts is when his hand gets possessed, and it's all just him moving the hand and stuff, and like you have him doing this crazy like almost Dick Van Dyke Three Stooges bit where the hand's hitting plates on him.
Yeah,
it's funny. I think it's funny.
Again, like the way that I was trying to describe that, I guess for me, humor works when it's contrasted to the images, to the horror, where action that's like over the top, like what's in the two Evil Deads, the humor I guess would work more for me if it were more subtle,
right?
As opposed to like also being over the top.
Yeah, because I'll make no mistake,
it's a lot.
The Evil Dead is a lot over the top, and that's just really Sam Raimi's style.
Which it's not like I don't think that it wasn't bad by any means. Like it didn't click with me.
Right.
But I can see why at least these two movies, and I'm sure Army of Darkness will prove it even more.
Yeah, because Army of Darkness, it really ramps up the humor.
Yeah.
But it's almost more like an action movie.
Gotcha.
Than like a horror movie. There's bits of horror in it, but it's more like taking homage to like the fun 80s action, but a bit more toned down.
Honestly, if there's something that has like absolutely no bearing on these movies but has had an effect in my mind all these years, is the advertising for both Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness. A lot of the comics that I read as a kid, especially Army of Darkness, had the posters like on the back of the issue. And so I've seen the image, of Ash with the chainsaw and the woman on like the rock.
That's
or whatever.
Army of Darkness.
Yeah. And so there were a lot of comics that I read that had the Evil Dead 2 poster. And I guess like what I felt looking at this skeleton with eyes made me think that it would be a different movie. After like over 20 years of seeing this skeleton with eyes and then not seeing the skeleton with eyes, you put yourself in a very precarious situation when you have something that's wildly...
It's just so unique.
Yeah.
It's its own thing. I don't feel like it's trying to rip off anything. It's just trying to be its own unique thing. And sometimes like doing something new and different, it can be a bit loud.
Yeah.
As you would. A bit bombastic. Not in a type of way where it's like trying to be like too edgy and too angsty, but just this type of style.
Do you think that it's branching out, like the world that's created in Evil Dead 1?
Oh, where it's just all self-contained in this one cabin.
And then all of a sudden you get like the Book of the Dead and like all of this stuff. And then by the end of the movie, you're in medieval times. Is that like, do you feel that that's a logical direction? Does it make sense? Does it work for you? Like what?
Well, I guess in a way, part of me, I kind of turn my brain off when it comes to Sam Raimi, because like, I know what Sam Raimi's style is, and I eat it up. I love the silly B-movie-ish, really good quality B-movie. Like, these are probably like the best quality B-movies you could ever have. Kind of campy, just a bit over the top, because I know Sam Raimi can do that, and he can do it very well. He's done it with Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness. He's done it in spades with the Spider-Man films, and it makes sense for that, because comic books are kind of dumb. Comic books are kind of stupid, but I say that in the best way because I love comic books as well, and it makes sense for Spider-Man because Spider-Man in the early 60s when it was coming out was a bit campy and goofy, and you get like the Clone Sagas and all that. That's kind of dumb, but it's a fun dumb. So it just really works with Sam Raimi because no one does this type of style anymore of this kind of goofy, over the top campiness, but done very well. So you have the bit of the awesome montage of him building the chainsaw hand. It's like, it's a chainsaw hand. That's stupid, but it's fun. And then him having him pointing the boomstick, the shotgun at the "I'll swallow your soul, I'll swallow your soul," and he's going, "Swallow this," boom. It's like, it's just fun. That's what I can say about the second one. Maybe the first one very much invokes that type of horror. It's more horror than the second one. But I guess Sam Raimi was in a different state of mind where he just wanted to make another Evil Dead, but just make it fun. Maybe this was the vision he had with the first one, or maybe he just he experienced making a bit more films, because Evil Dead 2 is a lot crisper. Yeah, the camera work, the acting, Bruce Campbell in general, I feel like he's not as stiff and like baby-eyed in the first one. And so when it comes to the goofiness of the book bound in human flesh and inked in blood, I love it. I don't care that him and the Oldsmobile, as he calls it, gets transported into medieval time. I don't give a damn. It's fun. It's just this crazy character who's at this point driven into madness from having to butcher his own friends and having to deal with this ancient evil that's, taunting him and making him go crazy, get transported into the Middle Ages. Yeah. This guy with a chainsaw and a shotgun. Yeah. You just don't, especially at this point in the 80s, you just don't, you don't get that anymore. It's a type of, it's an epicness to it.
I did like the realization after the knights start calling him, like the savior from the sky or something like that.
He's like, no.
Yeah. Like I like that. Like after being told what the prophecy is in the book, and then becoming the prophecy and realizing that like you have to fulfill something that's already been.
This one schlump guy. Yeah. Who just nothing special, interesting out of him. He's a survivor. He's at this point kind of a badass. And it's just funny seeing this Joe Blow guy just get thrown into this crazy world that's just been under him the whole time.
I wondered. Now because of the whole like Necronomicon, right, I would imagine that means that there's a lot of like Lovecraft at play.
Yeah, it's vaguely Lovecraftian with like this ancient evil being awakened by the book, and it's always been there, just been slumbering. I mean, even in the beginning of the film, with the professor guy learning further in the film that he translated it with the tapes, that it was always there because you can see it like lurking while they're driving to the cabin. It's just there, but like dormant, just waiting. You're at the door waiting for these stupid teenagers, college kids, to like go to the cabin, and it was helping them along because it's slightly possessed. I don't know if it's Cheryl. It's not Lindsay because Ash's sister. Yeah, possessed the hand to make the book, and she never tells anyone for some reason.
Yeah, so that was something that I wasn't sure how this was happening in The Evil Dead, because where there was a lot that was going on, and it didn't seem like anyone else was aware of it. But the cabin is really tiny. Yeah. Like when she's drawing and like she ends up making the, like the dumb face of the book, like it's happening so furiously that I don't see how anyone, like, unless the cabin was empty.
Well, it had the professor in it and his wife, and they ended up getting got by the Deadites.
No, but I mean, like when she's drawing, there's no one around her.
Well, they're somewhere in the cabin.
But like the cabin's like, it looked like a studio cabin. Like it was like one room.
The cabin's bigger than what it looks like on the outside.
Okay. Well, even like when they go in the beginning. Yeah. Which I thought that was also really weird. Like they send like Scott, like the one guy, to go in and like check everything out, but they're all like standing back as if they're not going to go in.
It's baby's first film. You got to give him some credit.
Oh yeah, no. I know. Just like it's not nitpicking. Right. It's more of just like they're little like human behavior things.
Or maybe they've sensed like a forebodingness, and the forebodingness is all around the forest and the cabin. It makes the forest come alive and tree rape a woman.
That I was not prepared for that.
Yes, Sam Raimi has gone on record to say that's like scene he regrets filming the most because it's very tasteless.
Yeah, it is. It
was him being a young, trying to be
like I can
hardcore.
See, like I can see, especially like just a couple of years after stuff like Amityville Horror and The Last House on the Left, where like things like sexual assault are being used in varying degrees of effect of like shocking, But like the trees, like if it had just like strangled her or something, like that would have been, or like implied that they had done it. But like the fact that we see the vine or the branch, going up. Yeah, I was just like, wow, I was not ready for this. And what's terrible is like that was not the worst rape that I saw yesterday because I made the mistake of watching Cannibal Holocaust.
You fool.
Yeah, I know. And I guess yesterday was like watching a lot of things that were not subtle at all between Little Nicky and Cannibal Holocaust and like
maybe you're
both of the Evil Deads.
Which one did you watch first?
Evil Dead.
Okay.
Yeah. Like
that one you just gotta turn your brain off a bit.
Yeah, I watched Evil Dead 2, and then a few hours later, Cannibal Holocaust, and then like right after Little Nicky. Like, yeah, I don't know.
Brain's an overload.
It was like it was just a lot of. Man, I needed Adam Sandler at the end of the day just to like bring me back to sanity.
And that's saying a lot.
Yeah. I think this is where familiarity with either a filmmaker or a genre or like anything like that really helps. Like it's less a question of judging a book by its cover and more of what mode do you put your brain in before going into it.
Yeah, because with Abbott and Costello, you kind of have to turn your brain off a bit because it's two comedy dudes going toe to toe with Universal monsters. Then with Evil Dead 2, you have to turn your brain off a bit with Evil Dead 2 because it's a bit more sillier and a bit more campier. And I know we didn't really go much detail into the comedy aspect, but the bits that were supposed to be funny, did you find funny?
I think they might have been lost on me. Because I could see like there were things that were being played for humor.
It was with him doing his own frontward somersault and the lead breaking, and you can hear the hand going, "Oh, son of a bitch," and flipping off Bruce.
It's one of those things where I can see like, oh, this is supposed to be funny,
but you didn't find it.
But I didn't find it funny.
I found it
but I can see how it would be funny.
Yeah.
And I think maybe if I were, I don't know, maybe if I had seen this when I were younger, like maybe like it's one of those things where, I don't know, like, okay, The Princess Bride. I don't think The Princess Bride is funny
at all. I love The Princess Bride.
Like, I think it's like one of the driest things. It's like if someone took...
You got a lot... Oh, man, you're going to anger a lot of people.
Yeah. Oh,
this is the season finale. People are expecting greatness, and you're just ripping off some of the best films ever.
Right? Like, I've with Princess Bride, like, I've been doing this for years, where, like, I get into the... not argument, but like the conversation where it ends up coming up where someone's like, I love The Princess Bride. And
it's that same thing where it's campy and goofy. You just turn your brain off a bit.
I can't do that. I can't turn it off. It's just all like, not only can I not turn it off, but it's like always, there's no 0 to 60 because it's just constantly
its own thing.
It's like the red, like the RPMs are in the red. And like, I don't know what it means. I don't know what it's doing, but it's just constantly doing that. And there's a kind of humor that's working in the late 80s that for me doesn't work. But I can see why. Like I can acknowledge that it's me and it's not them.
Right.
And it's something that works a lot better for me in like the early 90s and like, with that shift in like Saturday Night Live where you have Chris Rock and Chris Farley and Adam Sandler, guys like that. That's when humor kind of like comes back. Because in like late 80s, I don't know. There are a lot of things that I don't find funny that I can see what they're going for. And I think it's moments like this where you look at what isn't happening just as much as you look at what is.
Uh-huh.
And you're able to learn about yourself. And so, like, even without enjoying watching either Evil Dead, I don't feel like I wasted my time.
I think because maybe part of you is able to maybe appreciate maybe the filmmaking of it.
Yeah, like, like the fact that, like, they were done in the first place with barely having anything at all.
And, like, the legacy of what...
Yeah, that's
what it created.
interesting. Like, that's very interesting.
Like,
to
this little low-budget, early 80s independent horror film would launch careers of, like, a blockbuster director and two of the best director duos of all time, and this cultural icon that is Bruce Campbell.
Like that, I appreciate very much, even if it's not exactly for me, because I like to think that I'm not that much of a jerk to be like, oh, well, I don't like it, so you can't like it either.
Right.
Being able to see something like either Evil Dead and to think, well, what is this? Like, what is it doing, and how am I responding to it? Like that's important. It's kind of a litmus test.
Visceral reaction.
It is, exactly. See, it ties in. And I really, I learned that Doom happened. Doom was created.
Yeah, it's slightly inspired by
Yeah.
Evil Dead, and honestly, like
Makes sense.
Duke Nukem,
Oh yeah.
like the Hail to the King, baby.
Yeah.
That's from Army of Darkness. Like some of Duke's mannerisms as kind of like this asshole hero.
Yeah.
That's kind of what Ash becomes in Army of Darkness.
Gotcha.
And so you have this like these cultural iconic cult films that really paved the way into like modern things like Doom and Duke Nukem, and then what would become the Spider-Man films. And you have like I didn't mention this, but during the process of the Evil Dead films, you have this love dance between Sam Raimi and Wes Craven. Because did you notice in background of the first Evil Dead, there was the Hills Have Eyes poster?
Yes.
So I guess at some point Wes Craven saw this film, either really liked it or didn't acknowledge that Sam Raimi was giving a wink at Wes Craven. Maybe Wes Craven inspired Sam Raimi to become a filmmaker. I don't know. But then you have, it's either in the first Nightmare on Elm Street or maybe, no, it is in the first one, because it's the one that I think besides New Nightmare, Wes Craven directed himself. You have, I don't know if it's Johnny Depp character or if it's Heather Langenkamp's character, but on the TV in Nightmare on Elm Street, you have them playing
Watching
Evil Dead.
Gotcha.
And then you have Sam Raimi reciprocating that in Evil Dead 2 in the workshop. You have Freddy's glove.
Wait, where was that?
I don't remember where. It's somewhere hanging. It's like a split like blink and you miss.
Is it where he gets the chainsaw?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's either in the beginning of the film where he's going to cut off Linda's head, or when he's making the chainsaw. Somewhere in that workshop, you can see Freddy's glove. So.
Oh, wow. I did not catch that. Okay. I like that.
Yeah. Isn't that great?
That's nice.
It's like what you were talking about between Francis Ford Coppola and William Friedkin about this love dance between them and like their relationship and stuff.
Yeah.
With him nodding hats with Exorcist and Dracula and things like that. It's great.
Yeah. When I saw the Hills Have Eyes poster, because the first Evil Dead is what, 81?
Yep.
When I saw Hills Have Eyes and I saw the poster in that condition, I was thinking, is that poster old enough to be like that? Like, did it just get wrecked?
Oh, yeah. And they had a professor and his wife get turned into deadites.
Yeah.
Which reminds me of, I don't know why it popped into my head, of Evil Dead having like its own little bit of comedy right at the credits, because you have like all the shit that happens in the first one. Then you have this moment of brevity, nice, beautiful music, birds are chirping, there's butterflies or whatever, and Ash can finally breathe, and then you have him screaming and him coming after him, and it cuts, and it has that dopey like phonograph music. in the basement, and it's just
It was odd. Yeah.
It just goes to show you like the type of person Sam Raimi, and he kind of embellishes the silly.
Yeah. And there's definitely like not just a place for that, but like there needs to be someone doing that. And so I appreciate that very much.
Very much in spades and Darkman.
Yeah.
Because like that movie's silly, but it's fun and epic.
Yeah.
It's really his version of Batman and Phantom of the Opera because he couldn't get the rights to do a Batman film.
It's also Darkman. It was before Army of Darkness, right? That was like 1990.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Army of Darkness was 92.
So it's coming out like right in between the two Batmans.
Yep. And it's that same type of like not a lot of budget.
Yeah.
And the effects are cheesy, but there's a quality to it. And that's what you can really say about Sam Raimi, even if you don't like it or not. There's this kind of charming, weird quality to it that you just can't not hate.
Again, like Sam Raimi is someone that has never done it for me, but I can see why he does it for other people. And so I definitely appreciate that. With this Doctor Strange coming out, I'm very much excited to see it because like not just the direction that Marvel is taking Doctor Strange. Yeah,
I'm interested to know
just like what does he do? Like this is like a second chance from God.
Yeah, because what you have is you have the Sam Raimi who, really pioneered the superhero films after, you could say like Blade really did that. Yeah. But at the time of like when X-Men and Spider-Man came out, and it's by who? The guy who made Evil Dead. He's doing a Spider-Man film. Mm-hmm. People really like them. You have that legacy, and you have what Sam Raimi can do with like the weird, almost Lovecraftian horror type thing, and you wonder, is Marvel and Disney gonna make him rein it in a bit, or are they gonna allow Sam Raimi to be Sam Raimi?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm
interested to know if they're gonna have like the weird Sam Raimi like jump cuts where it's the most perfect example is, of course, I was talking about the Doc Ock scene where it's very Sam Raimi, but then you have another one pops into mind when you have that moment in Spider-Man 3 where like the dam's about to break or whatever, and all the bolts pew pew, and it like jump cuts, getting closer, kind of awkwardly cuts to Sam each time. That's a very Sam Raimi thing. So I wonder if we're going to get that in this, or is it going to be a bit more reined in, like you just follow the formula, Sam? I'm very much, I'm hoping for like, give us Lovecraftian Doctor Strange with Sam Raimi style.
I mean, if they're introducing Dark Doctor Strange and they're going further into the multiverse.
Very much in depth of, there's Ash and kind of the evil Ash.
Yeah.
And Evil Dead 2, and especially that awesome bit in the first one with the mirror.
Yeah.
Where it's the mirror, but it's also water. And
that was pretty cool.
Yeah. He's done this rodeo before, and you'll see it even more in Army of Darkness when we do that. There's, I'm good, you're good Ash, and I'm bad Ash. Mm-hmm. You're a good little two-shoes. That's the film. So he has some experience with doing like these doppelganger roles. So I'm very interested to know, like, all right, are we going to just get regular MCU, or are we going to get Sam Raimi?
Who knows? I think him having another chance at a big budget like this is going to be interesting no matter what the result is. And I mean, even if it's just half as good as the first Doctor Strange, then this is going to be wonderful.
Because it could go two ways. And we're deviating from the talk, but it's important because it shows where Sam Raimi has come from 1981. Because you have Taika Waititi's very unique Thor Ragnarok, and it's its own thing. It seems very much different from anything else that's happened in the MCU. But I wonder, since Multiverse of Madness is going so in depth of what has already happened in the MCU with the multiverse and stuff.
How much can it deviate?
Yeah, if like he's, as I keep repeating like a broken record, if he's allowed to do his thing, or they have to rein him in, and if he is allowed to do his thing, people who aren't familiar with Sam Raimi's style, how they're gonna react to that?
Yeah.
What will their visceral reaction be?
Exactly. It's fascinating now, 40 years later.
Yeah.
Like what his career has, all of the weird moments in his career.
And it's also
that
interesting
we've gone to this.
to look at because he hasn't done any directing in a while.
No.
He's done a few episodes of Ash vs. Evil Dead,
Mhm.
which is the TV show that's kind of a continuation of Evil Dead, but it's also like a vague reboot. I don't think it touches on Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness. But before that, he did Drag Me to Hell in 2009. I don't know if he's done anything else since. I can't think of any.
I mean, doing Spider-Man 3 probably hurt his prospects a bit.
Yeah, just because
That was a shit show. Yeah.
that's more studio
Yeah.
than anything. So I'm wondering if for this one it's the same thing, or they're allowing him to be him.
I hope so.
I hope so too.
Well, that's the end of season 1. And that's all we have for you today. Thank you, folks, once again for joining us on this week's episode of Visceral Reactions. And join us next time for season 2.
The cuffs are off. We're really free to go anywhere with this.
Anywhere. Well, I'm Matthew Jimenez.
Groovy.
And that's a wrap.
We'll see you next time, whenever that may be.
Only time will tell.
Only time will tell. See you later.
Bye, folks.